Damn right I can hear you, and it's a good thing because I think I got an interview.
Yes, with me.
How you doing?
Good, good. How's it going with Jeff Waters?
Oh, not bad. Just sitting in the snow here in Ottawa, and there you go. It's cold.
Now, does that make you play better guitar in the cold, or is it needing?
No, I haven't actually. I've touched the guitar twice in the last month.
Wow.
Nope, too many other things to do.
So, Jeff, what's been going on lately, and what you got lined up for 2012?
Yeah, just doing. What am I doing? Finished a record a little while ago, and working on a second record, which is kind of strange, but we're working on that, trying to get new deals for the first record that we've got done. And in between, just having a blast, booking shows like 70,000 tons of metal boat cruise coming up in a few weeks in Miami and Grand Cayman Islands. And I think some of my friends' bands there are kicking ass on that one. Who is it? Bodum, Overkill, Nightwish, us, a bunch of other bands. So that's going to be a blast. Sit in the sun and play some metal and hang out with metalheads.
Now, did you ever play on a boat like that caliber in your life?
Only the Sweden Rock boat cruise from Oslo to Stockholm. That was fun. It wasn't a big ass boat. It was actually it was a huge boat. What am I talking about? Yeah, wait, it was. Yes, I have. This will be my second.
And how
that was a big cruise.
And how does it feel when you play on a boat compared to playing on land, a guitar?
The only thing that was different was just you start headbanging and you feel a little dizzy, and then you realize because the boat's rocking away.
So that's the only problem.
Other than that, no, it's all the same. Just music, noise, amps, guitars, metal fans, just fun,
I see that you got a new overdrive pedal out. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, a company in Montreal, Solid Gold Effects, makes some good pedals, and there's lots of good companies around, but these guys are one of the top ones that really care about the quality of it and stuff. And so I just was talking to them and saying, listen, I've been using this Boss overdrive. It's called an OD1, and it was they only made them back in the early 80s, and it was the original ones were, I think, 3 models, but mainly this Japanese model. And I had 2 of these, and over the years I've had guys from like George Lynch, just all these different guitar players, well-known players, sort of contacting me and saying, hey, Jeff, you wouldn't want to sell those pedals, would you? And I never would, because they are the best, or were the best pedals, but you just can't find them anywhere. And when you look on eBay, most of them are all fakes. People will sort of take the cases and put the crappy electronics in them and call it the vintage pedal. But anyway, this Boss OD1 was like the secret weapon to a lot of the big 4 bands and all the other bands. A lot of them. It was a big secret weapon that people didn't really talk about because they didn't want everybody to easily get that sound. So I had these pedals, and I essentially after 30 years, these parts and transistors and all these little diodes and whatever the heck, they all start wearing out, and eventually they just start sounding worse and worse, and they're done. And they don't make replacement parts for these things anymore, so you can never recreate that sound. So before mine died, I went to the Solid Gold Effects guy and said, hey, any way you could like clone this but make it better, and see if you can actually make it better and do these 2 little things to the sound. And took about 3-4 months. He did it, and then he said, okay, that's great, but you know what, if we're going to sell this or offer it for like a limited edition small run, because it's not a money making thing, it's just more of just people who know my playing, or guitar players in the business that know my playing, sometimes ask me about gear stuff, and so I think some of these people want to get the pedal, but we just do it because we're gear freaks and we have fun doing it. But it's like, if we're going to make a pedal like that, why don't we also, the guy at Solid Gold Effects came up with the idea, well, why don't we have sort of like the Van Halen kind of flanger idea, which is, the Van Halen flanger came out a few years ago, and it had a button that said EVH on it. So you press the button, and it bypasses everything on the pedal, and only gives you one sound. It gives you the Eddie Van Halen sound. And then when you press the button again and take that off, then the pedal itself, all the buttons and the knobs, they work, and you can get your own sounds. Well, we had the idea, let's do that with this pedal. You press one button, and you got the perfect, better than the original overdrive, and you press the button again, and then you can have all these newer high gain distortion overdrive sounds, and so it was kind of fun to do it. It was just a blast. It's absolutely nothing. You don't do that kind of thing with a small company for any other reason other than just to have fun and see what you can do, you know?
So this pedal also would reflect on all your past albums in guitar tone, mostly?
No, well, I mean, past albums and stuff, you know, the thing is I basically use mostly the same gear on most of my records, and it's just like the things that change are even moving a microphone in front of your speaker cabinet, moving it like, you know, 20 millimeters changes the actual sound. So as much as I've kept most of the gear pretty similar, except I've started using this core blade amp for the last few years, you know, everything's pretty well the same as it's always been for me. And I'd always used this pedal for many years to get the sound. I could put this pedal in front of any amp and it would still sound pretty good, you know? Mm-hmm. And again, a lot of amp makers out there make good amps. There's not like one good amp or one great amp. There's like 10, 15, you know? But, yeah, but the thing with this pedal is you can kind of put it in front of any of these decent amps, and it'll give you kind of that sound that I got in a way, like, in a way. So a lot of it, too, is that, you know, it comes from the actual playing, how you're picking and how you're doing your thing. But it's also a kind of, you could be a blues guy and this pedal would rock, you know? It's just depends on, you know, a good overdrive is a good overdrive, put it that way.
And also you mentioned new albums. Now these are Annihilator albums?
Yeah, get one done and one more to go. We're just going to do some touring in between while we figure out deals for them and let's have fun on tour.
That means in 2012 we're going to see a big catalog coming out.
Well, I've got a bunch of older catalog CDs available now, and we just one of the albums we've done has a pile of old songs on it that we redid, just simply because we just sort of, Dave and I, my singer, guitar player, and I, just sat down and said, you know what, we don't want to really do this. We didn't initially want to do this. But, I mean, Testament, Exodus, they've kind of touched on this where they, not redoing like Exodus is Bonded by Blood or anything. We didn't want to redo an album. We just wanted to sort of pick the songs that the fans on our website have kept saying, we'd love to hear what Dave would sound like singing this song. And I kind of like the idea of redoing a whole bunch of songs for a few reasons. One was because the production, you know, a lot of classic records I listen to, the songs are just so amazing, and the playing and the performance and all that, but then the actual sound is so horrible. You put it in your car stereo and it just sounds like garbage. And I kind of like it now when some bands redo stuff and make it sound good. So you turn it up in your car and it sounds huge, you know. So I thought maybe that's a good idea. And also, because a lot of our fans now are young. It's just like, it's almost like the parents of these, the kids of the parents that liked Annihilator are coming to the shows and buying the records now. And finally, slowly in North America, kids are starting to hear about this Annihilator band. And so it's, you know, but they're saying, listen, we don't know where in Canada or the States to find these records because a lot of them weren't even released here. And we don't want to pay $35 on eBay. So Dave had a great idea of like, why don't we just give us one or two CD set of like the best of kind of thing, what we would be proud of, you know, playing for people and saying this is Annihilator in 15 or 16 songs and, you know, or more. And yeah, there we go. So, you know, it's just having fun with that when that one's finished, and the studio album is kind of on the way too. So touring coming up, blah, blah, blah.
And that's all
same
good.
old stuff. It's not, to me, it's just like, yeah, another album, another this and that. It's not like boring, but it's just more of a routine now. So it's just like, yeah, it's almost like you expect at this point after 13 studio CDs that you start to expect that you're going to do another one and keep going for the next 5,000 years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But the irony of that, or the actual thing behind that, is a lot of times you stop and you realize, you know, even having one album out on Roadrunner in 1989 and having that hit big, and then the second one was even bigger, Never Neverland, and then the third and fourth ones were huge in Japan and some European countries. Each time something like that happens, I just sort of sit down at some point and shake my head and go, "You're the luckiest Canadian kid in the world." Do you know what I mean?
For sure. And that's great.
Except I'm not a kid, but I act like one. But that's a different story.
You recall the days of, video when Annihilator was played on Much Music and MTV and stuff?
Music Plus, MTV Headbangers Ball. And
yeah,
that was kind of I guess 88 to 92 for me. Those 4 years were, it was a bit of a blur, a bit of a haze because of a lot of things. One was, here I am in Ottawa and couldn't find musicians that wanted to be serious and forget about going to bars and looking good and all that and trying to get chicks. It was, for me, it was like, well, no, wait a minute, guys. Why don't you learn how to play your instruments and learn how to write songs, and let's get good as a band, and then we'll get all the girls we want.
Right.
So it was like, so it was about the music first, and I just couldn't get guys to stay with me back then that were serious. So I just picked up out of Ottawa, packed up everything, and went to Vancouver, where there was about 100 times more musicians in Vancouver, and it was like a dream city. So many metal bars and so many. Compared to Ottawa, Ottawa was actually is not the greatest place in the world, that's for sure. I just went out there, and I can't even remember what the question was.
Do you think that the evolution of music is going to go back to those days, the good old days of Annihilator, when, bands like you were played on these TV stations?
Well, for that, like, the good thing the lucky thing for me is that while in like 92 or so with, Alanis Morissette, Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, all these bands came out, and it was Pearl Jam and all that, and it became, in North America, just became taboo or whatever. Like, literally record companies were sending out memos saying anything with the word metal in a band's bio has to be dropped from the label, and that's what happened then. It was just disgusting. It was like metal was so big in the 80s, and then we ended the glorious metal 80s with monster records like, Rust in Peace and especially Painkiller and, Never Neverland. But anyway, it was like that was the end of the big days of metal here to this point. But, MTV back then was Headbangers Ball was metal, blah, blah, blah. Everything was Cool Music Plus and Much Music, and they wiped it all clean. They just got rid of it all, and only, it developed into a newer style, but there was good bands like Pantera that kept it going. And while everybody else like Slayer, Maiden, Priest, they dropped. They went from playing arenas and stadiums all the way down to like Maiden and that not even playing in North America. Mm-hmm. And they'd go to Blaze Bailey, and then they played smaller places. And then Priest went with Ripper, and they'd play clubs. And then Slayer went down to clubs in Vancouver when I was there. So it was a real big hit, and, only bands like Motorhead were still going, and Slayer. Metallica, of course, changed. They were not playing guitar solos at one point.
Right.
So the real stuff was carried on by, I tell you, it was bands like Testament, Exodus, Annihilator, Overkill. Those are the bands in the middle that were not the big famous bands, but we weren't small. And we were the ones that were starving and trying to continue when most people would have quit and just got a job and made money and done a different career. Whereas that's what I respect about this is the Testament, Annihilator, Overkill, Exodus guys that just, we're not the big four, we're not the big rich famous bands that fill up stadiums, but we just never gave up. And we never split up and had a reunion 15 years later. We were always putting records out, and we were always touring. So anyway, I think the glorious days of metal, Europe continued on. For us, we got dropped out of the States in 93 and we were gone. But, Europe just kept most of us bands alive. And they saved a lot of our asses, over there. The U.S. and a bit of Canada became more corporate, more force-fed, You're told to like this band or that band. Kids are told when they go to HMV or the record stores, and you see the big Disturbed posters on the wall. You're supposed to think they're very heavy and they are so good. And then after years, kids with the internet started to figure out that, wait a second, Slayer's way heavier, or this band's much heavier, and this is, there's so many other bands in metal out there that are not on the radio and they're not getting a big publicity push and all this stuff. And luckily for the internet, for us, the the real metal bands are always there for fans to discover. But it's coming back. It's been coming back since 2000 and, the early 2000s, I think. But it never went away in Europe, man. It was always there.
You see, us in Canada, we don't see that, often, unless you're really in Europe, that, it keeps on going.
But you know what? Real metal fans here do. See, the thing is, that's the cool thing about Canada is you got Quebec, and Quebec is the metal capital, even though Quebec is a province, but it's the biggest there. And then you've got your pockets of Edmonton and Calgary and Vancouver. You've got stuff there, like Gigantour, for example, will go there and do fantastic. But metal in Canada could be big, and metal in Canada is big in the underground, but it's only because of the metal fans, the people, because the clubs don't support it, the tour agencies don't support it, the big corporations don't support it, and the radio doesn't support it. Even the record companies in Canada don't support metal. I mean, you could pick one or two examples, but they don't give a fuck about metal. The only time they'll give a shit about it is if it starts becoming more and more money again, like it was in the past. But you got to give Canada and Quebec credit, because without any support from any of these, companies, clubs, and labels and all that stuff, we're pumping out some pretty fucking good talent in this country, and we've been doing it right back from, the early days of Razor, Anvil, Exciter, but we pumping all the way through to Devin Townsend, and then through to, just so many. And now there's still a lot of good talent here. It's just the sad part is, because of the way the music business is, how crooked and shitty it is, a lot of good talent just can't afford to go on tour, and a lot of good talent just can't stay together. Like, bands cannot stay together if the record companies are taking all the money.
Right.
It's just impossible. So, but but then again, the fans are what keep metal alive here. It sure isn't the industry, that's for sure.
Well, Jeff, to finish off, incredible work you've done, all this time, and to keep it going. It's great to see Annihilator still, on this big sea of metal.
Yeah, on the European sea, but thank God the internet's here, because we get a lot of people from Canada and the States to be able to follow us and let us know if they like our stuff or not. And hey, man, we were out of Canada for 17 years. We had not played a show here, and the province of Quebec brought us back 3 times in the last 6 months.
Wow.
So it's, what do we have? Quebec City, Festival d'été in Quebec City. Then we had Heavy MTL, and then a small festival in Trois-Rivières.
Excellent stuff. You speak French very good?
Pas beaucoup, mais un petit peu.
Pas beaucoup. Un petit peu. Excellent. Yeah. Jeff Waters, a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully 2012 is a great year for Annihilator.
For sure. And wait a minute, I'm off to Montreal there next week, aren't I? For the Battle of the Bands or something. MTL.
Yes, that's true.
That's going to be a blast. I think it's on Wednesday, and I'm judging like 6 death metal bands. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Good stuff, and I'm sure you'll be signing maybe a few autographs.
Yeah. I'll just be having fun like everybody else.
Well, Jeff, pleasure talking to you, man, and you have a great one.
Yeah, you too. Take care, man.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.